biodiversity that we will discuss after the break. Stay with us. You're watching the Merdeka Award Roundtable. We are on the topic of biodiversity, and earlier we touched on how consumers and businesses also have a significant role to play to reverse the loss of biodiversity. Now, Julian, for example, let's take the example of banning the sale of shark fins. When the buying stops, the killing stops, so that's what they say. But how effective has this been in the sense that campaign, that the message that's been sent out?
I hate to sound negative and go against all of the good work that is being done on this, but the fact we're still having this, the fact that it's still going on, suggests to me that what we have done has not been terrifically successful. I mean, there have been anti-shark finning campaigns going on for at least 20 years that I know of, if not more. I remember being involved in some discussions with the Ministry of Environment back in 2008, and somebody had proposed a program of beach cleanups. And the lady from the ministry said, the special assistant to the minister said, why are we still doing beach cleanups? I mean, we keep doing it, right? Yes, we do. Why? Because we're wasting our time. What we should be doing is dealing with this problem at source. So instead of going to clean the beach up, stop the waste getting into the water in the first place. Now that's an easy one, but her point was, we keep doing the same thing and nothing changes. And I think the thing with shark's fin is we simply haven't got the right message through to the right people yet.
Who are the right people?
Oh, crikey Moses. The people that think shark's fin is good for them in some way, it's not. It's just cartilage. It's the broth that has all of the taste. The people that don't understand the position of the shark in the ecosystem, back to the biodiversity argument, you take the shark out, everything below that starts to fall apart. And when you remove that shark, then the whole trophic layer in the marine ecosystem starts to fall apart, which means that we will see less food fish and we will see more jellyfish. And so on. Now, who needs to understand this? Well, the Department of Fisheries needs to understand it, Summer Parks, Department of Marine Parks needs to understand it, the consumers need to understand it, but I don't know how to get through to them. We have not yet been able to do so. You know, there are similar problems with wildlife trafficking. I mean, who do we talk to? I mean, you want to go to the man in Semporna who's fishing and shark and finning there. He's just trying to feed his family.
That's right.
Right? So we're back to economic development as well. Mainstream it so that the government understands and includes it in decisions, but also look at where it's happening and see what's the economic development issues here that are forcing this guy to do this. So, how can we stop that?
So the issue of mainstreaming biodiversity into everyday life of individuals, who are the stakeholders here and what more can be done? For example, corporates, there are some who are actively involved in that, but are they translating it into effective conservation on the ground? Perhaps Elizabeth can answer that.
I don't see a great deal of corporate involvement in this beyond CSR programs, to be honest. The corporations should really be going beyond a token tree planting project or a token beach cleanup project, as Julian mentioned, or releasing a couple of turtle hatchlings. It has to be part of their process. It has to be part of the business decisions. I can give you a good example of one of our donors for a project, the Body Shop Malaysia. After some time of working with us and doing small little projects like this, they were offered to be part of a very important fashion show. And they asked the question to the fashion show organizers, will you be using animal skins? And the fashion show organizer said, well, I can't guarantee that we won't. And so they pulled out. So those are the kinds of decisions we would like to see corporations making, because their dollar speaks volumes. And it also sends a message to an entire customer base that they have. So they have to change the way they do business first.
Well, you mentioned dollar. I'd like to get into the topic of funding. How big of a stumbling block is funding in your conservation efforts?
Very difficult. We are always looking for funds on a yearly basis, continuously. And quite fortunately, we have been able to also get funds from the corporate side. We have had opportunities to actually run centres. Yeah? We have 8 centres throughout the country. And one of our biggest supporter actually is Petronas, yeah? Which actually built a centre, and then we manage it. Because the other sensitive area that some might think is our association with Vale Minerals. Yeah? They are voted, as you know, it's quite open knowledge. But we look at it from a different perspective. We look at it from, if you don't engage, if you do not engage and provide expertise, you do not provide advice, you leave them alone, what's going to happen? We won't be able to determine more damage, perhaps, that they will do. But if we engage with them, we at least have a semblance of providing information, providing guidance, so that they would know how to work within certain guidelines.
I think we are also seeing more examples of that. We're seeing Shell getting involved in the Danung Valley Conservation with Earthwatch. Also mentioned Petronas in the big marine life regeneration project in Bintulu to preserve biodiversity.
Yeah? I agree with all that you have said. Eventually, I think it's a question of mainstreaming. And mainstreaming means getting the buy-in, not only of the NGOs, not only of the corporate sector, but also government. And government, as Elizabeth pointed out, at every level, at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. Preferably if someone could champion that. And the best champion would be the head of government, the Prime Minister. And I'm not too keen on insisting on laws and regulations. They're good. But hopefully, I hope we could come to a stage where it's our conscience, that we feel that we need to do this for the common good, for our country and also for the globe. But that takes a lot of investment, a change of mindset,
I think, sorry if I may add, I think there are some things that we can do quite quickly. To give you a simple example and to talk about funding, right? Whenever land is cleared in a heavily forested place which is rich with wildlife, we inevitably find a lot of that wildlife dead on the road, or running into people's houses and causing conflicts or trampling over people's farms, right? And why isn't there a simple levy charged for every time one of these forested areas with large volumes of wildlife, why isn't there a levy charged to the person or the entity that's clearing the land, simply to enable funding for an agency like the Wildlife Department to deal with the conflict? Translocating an elephant is expensive. It's incredibly expensive. And the Wildlife Department is already under stress for so much funding. They hardly have anything to work on. And, something like this would go directly to them to deal with the problem. Why should they have to bear that cost, or why should villagers have to bear the cost of, elephants trampling through their plantations or whatever?
The business isn't doing it today because it's not required to, and because that will be a cost on my business. I'm not going to do that. I make less profit. We need to change the thinking and say that's actually now, today, that is now part of the cost of you doing business. You're going to make less profit because we require you, through regulation or policy, whatever, we require you to repair the biodiversity loss that you have created. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to pay to move that elephant. And we've all got to accept lower share dividends, lower profitability in our companies. But these are mechanisms that we can find. It's not there yet, but it's an idea. Just make the companies pay for the biodiversity that they're damaging. We've got to get used to that. Or
reconsider using that piece of land altogether.
Right. Yes,
because the
or
business
do something
cost
else.
is too high.
Okay. Sorry to stop you guys, but we have to go for a last commercial break. But let's talk about mechanisms to promote sustainable use of resources and to have conservation and development go hand in hand in a sustainable manner. That we'll discuss in the last segment of this Merdeka Award Roundtable. Do stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. This is the last segment of the Merdeka Award Roundtable, whereby we've been discussing biodiversity. I think we've come down to this notion that, how can we best promote the use of this invaluable ecosystem? How best can we regulate stakeholders, as well as what best to incentivize them to be part of this effort?
Can I start that by touching on the global development? The issue of biodiversity is it's a crucial issue globally, and they have this UN convention called the Convention on Biological Diversity with 3 aims. 1, conservation of biodiversity. 2nd, sustainable use of biodiversity. 3rd, access and benefit sharing of biological resources. It was signed in 1992, and Malaysia is one of the 200 countries that are signatories to this crucial treaty. But sadly, today, the decline in biodiversity is still happening. So it begs the question, it's not out of awareness at the global level, but the action is really and should be at the national level and at the local level, because biodiversity also now is not a global, it's a global concern, but it's not the global commons. It's the sovereign rights of nation, So Malaysia, for instance, being one of the 12 mega diverse countries in the world, we should take pride in that, but we should also see that that level of biodiversity is preserved. So how do we do that nationally? I think Latiff knows best.
Well, we mentioned earlier, we have lots of policies in place, but does it come down to enforcing them? Perhaps we need more regulation. I'm not sure.
You raise a very pertinent issue, because when the National Biodiversity Policy came out in 1998 and now revised, just launched 2 weeks ago, it's a beautiful document. All right, I mean, Tansi knows best. But the thing is, the stewardship, the ownership, all land, water, and resources and biodiversity belong to the state. As simple. Therefore, the state in particular must champion their resources, and sustainability must come to the state. Then, except for Sarawak and Sabah, which to my mind are to the forefront, and possibly other states, the other state in Peninsula said they don't have the capacity to address the policy. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the knowledge. Now that is what we have, that was what we thought, 17 years ago? We want every state to champion, because it is their resources, their green asset. In particular, state with a lot of resources, Perak, Johor, Pahang, Terengganu, Kelantan, Terengganu, and the turtle. And we have done this, but yet the buy-in, take for example the turtle. We were trying very hard for the state government of Terengganu to buy into the turtle conservation. They say, what? It is the habit, the culture of Terengganu people to eat the turtle eggs. They say, well, it's true. But the thing is, if the state Terengganu, can champion conservation of turtle, and Melaka also, and Sabah and Sarawak, I think we may win some. But still, I would like to see all protected areas are within the state jurisdiction, every single thing. Therefore, I like to challenge every state to take into their stride, to preserve and to use and to share with other states and other stakeholders of what they have.
Malaysia's marine parks, of which there are numerous, are managed at federal level. And the marine park is essentially the water around the island.
Yes.
So the Marine Parks Department is responsible for managing what happens in the water, but state is responsible for what happens on land.
Yes, right.
And if they want to develop, as you're saying, they go ahead and develop. The impact that has on the water is not their problem.
Exactly.
So you have this state-federal mismatch because of the legislation, because of the way that's been organised. So we need
Concurrent.
Thank you. The concurrent list. We need the states to take more responsibility for the development, and I think this is a key thing. It's a nice policy, But if the states don't actually take it into account in terms of development, then it won't work.
So where do you start to breach that gap? No, granted, we have all these policies in place, but what's really happening? I mean, why is it not translating into what is expected?
I think essentially is the state, as we mentioned earlier, sees the forest, sees the land as a source of income. And I think if that can be sustainably developed, I think, together with development. Because I think most of us, we are not against development per se, but it must be developed in a sustainable manner. And I think that can be achieved with greater understanding between the objective of achieving certain development benchmark and also allowing for biodiversity to thrive. And having said that, the different requirements for achieving that can actually be set as targets. Because I think the earlier plan that Tan Sri as well as Professor Latiff mentioned, I think there were some very statements, they're actually statements of a fact that we want to achieve, but by when? There was no set targets.
So
but
the
latest one,
instead.
But the latest one, which I'm pleased to say, that there are now benchmarks to say that we're going to achieve that by when, under different categories. So we're moving positively, we're moving forward, and we hope
Are we
that,
moving fast enough though? I mean, the rate
we
of...
hope we could run. We are now just starting to walk, but I think we're getting there.
Okay.
We hope,
How
at
do you
some
expedite
point.
that process? The
Yeah.
rate of deforestation, the rate of the loss of biodiversity is moving so much faster than our conservation efforts, sadly, as it is. But maybe you have any ideas on how we can approach that in a more urgent manner?
I think we are all collectively responsible. That's what I like about mainstreaming. That's why I like why we need to increase the level of awareness of appreciation about biodiversity among members of the public. And it could even start with the children in kindergarten, right, to lifelong. We need to have that appreciation.
Okay, this, everyone talks about